It's going to take effort from you, it's going to take effort from me, and it's not going to be pretty. There's going to be some dirt and grime. Might have to scrub out a few toilets. Might have to work out in the rain. Might have to work with people that you didn't necessarily want to. If we all collectively came together with the same focus, right? And this isn't just sort of kumbaya moment. This is about principles, and principles guide the way. And so when you're beginning from the standpoint of pure principle, well, it's very easy. You want this world, getting back to the master key type ideology, you want this world to be a better place for your nephew, your niece, your grandmother, your husband, your brother, your sister, right? The people that we love or that we're supposed to love. Now, when you're so broke that you don't really get to meet those milestones together, there's no real memories together, right? Everyone's so disparate and separate. That's when we get into this critical place where philosophers kind of referred to this not only just as the underground man with the Dostoevsky, right? Poster letters from the underground, but got pretty deep in with the idea or the ideation of this homunculus, or this golem, right? That has been portrayed in many different ways. You could almost say like a Frankenstein's monster, like that this amalgamation of all these different empty, void artifices of humanity and what people represented at one time, just kind of thrown together in this shoddy sort of way, and has ended up becoming this, again, Thomas Jefferson talked about it, right? Waking up on the beaches that our forefathers had fought and died for, right? Homeless. That's the time that we're in. And people are trying to separate themselves from this by putting people down that the person that's putting these other people down was sitting in that seat not too long before, but they wanted to distinguish and create a compartmentalization where they sort of pushed them away as if they were diseased, right? But if somebody is going through homelessness, if someone is on SNAP benefits, if somebody really is trying to make it through a really hard time, don't just put them lump them into a category, especially if they're your family members, especially if they're your friends, especially if they're contemporaries, people that lived in your town or whatnot. You also aren't obligated to pull money out of your pocket and just give it. I mean, there's a very transcendental notion here, right? Emerson, Thoreau, right? Where you see somebody begging and they're smiling and they're holding a sign. And through transcendentalism, you don't give that dollar out. You see the gift as the fact that they have to learn to survive, and that must be, if there's any karma involved, that must be their karma. But we know better because we live in a time where everybody is being put through what I would consider superfluous and unnecessary stress, right? So we see that humanity in one another because we see it in our own lives, right? So sometimes all you have to do is don't judge on people if they're using little SNAP benefits. Don't judge on them if they're on a disability. But when you begin to see that there are abuses taking place, right? And so how do we know that abuses are indeed taking place? And that is by their fruits you shall know them, by their works you shall know them. When someone is not giving back, right? When they refuse to give back, when they're not trying to teach any methodology and thought or discourse in human ethics and behavior that really begins at a principle level, and they go off into details that when we talk about on this channel, you have cognitive dissonance, you have Stockholm syndrome. That's where you kind of get into this trauma bonding. And a lot of people don't even know that they live with this throughout their lifetimes because it happened at such a young, impressionable age, a meldable age where they haven't even formatively come together yet, right? So it's a very tough thing. So sometimes the best thing you can do is just to not judge another person. And I know people see, this channel, and if they take a cursory view, they think, oh, you're doing content on someone else. And I'm like, no, I'm using it as a focal point because this person it's like the First Amendment audits. You're out there in public view, right? In front of everybody, stating with all transparency your entire life and the things you're doing, and then you flip-flop and you say something entirely different. Why is it a problem? Well, in the past, you would see somebody that opened up a storefront. That's what YouTube represents these days. And they're taking in, I don't know, between $7,000 and $10,000 per month, which is a pretty good store, at least 30, 40 years ago, right? Selling donuts or crafts or leather goods, whatever it might be, right? They got to turn their products. They got to keep their lights on. They spend a lot of time in their store. There's a craft. There's a trade, right? They're putting their public persona, their public face out there. Even more so, they're having to go into this networking with other people, right? To where they have to learn to work together. Now, part of the disfunct is the algorithm, our computers, how the Googleized matrix, the DARPA, ARPA